All right, let's dive into a story that is just a classic case study in corporate governance failure. We're talking about how a company's incredible success story became a private treasure chest for its top executives. Yep, we're talking about Tyco International, a wild story of how corporate greed can go spectacularly and very, very publicly wrong.
So, how does a massive corporate scandal get uncovered? Sometimes it starts with something almost comically absurd. In this case, a $6,000 shower curtain. But let's be clear, that curtain, paid for with company money, wasn't the real problem. It was a symptom, a tiny gold-plated sign of an entire ocean of executive excess that was about to rock the corporate world to its core.
You see, before all the drama, Tyco International was an absolute giant, a massive, sprawling global company that looked totally unstoppable. But as we're about to see, its very size and complexity, well, that became the perfect cover for its downfall, turning it into the poster child for corporate corruption.
So, what exactly was Tyco? It was a conglomerate, and that just means it was this huge corporation made up of lots of different, often unrelated businesses all under one roof. Now, back then, building these corporate empires was all the rage, but you have to remember this detail, because all that complexity, it created a lot of shadows, and in those shadows, some very questionable things were allowed to hide in plain sight.
This brings us to the really juicy part, the mechanics of the heist. I mean, how did a handful of executives actually manage to siphon hundreds of millions of dollars out of a huge public company? Well, it wasn't one single brilliant move. It was a slow, systematic exploitation of the company's own structure.
Their playbook was, honestly, brutally simple. It really boils down to 3 steps. First, they used the company's insane complexity to hide what they were doing. Second, they basically treated company loan programs and expense accounts like their own personal piggy banks. And the final piece of the puzzle? All of this happened right under the nose of a board of directors that, well, just wasn't paying attention. And when the lid finally blew off this thing, the allegations were just staggering. We're not talking about small stuff here. We're talking massive, unauthorized bonuses, millions of dollars of corporate funds being used for things like lavish parties and luxury apartments. And on top of all that, they were deliberately messing with the earnings reports to make the company look healthier than it really was, all so they could boost their own paychecks.
Of course, an empire built on something like this was bound to crumble. A scheme this audacious just can't last forever. Once the truth started to trickle out, the fallout was incredibly fast and severe. It led to massive investigations, major legal battles, and a tarnished legacy that the company is, frankly, still trying to escape today.
And the collapse happened fast. The first whispers of misconduct started in the early 2000s, and that quickly snowballed into formal indictments by 2002. After a few years of legal battles, the top executives were convicted. And in the aftermath, the company itself had to be completely torn down and rebuilt just to survive.
Now, it's really important to remember that Tyco didn't happen in a vacuum. It was actually part of this infamous trio, right alongside Enron and WorldCom. These 3 scandals together created a perfect storm that exposed these deep, systemic weaknesses in American corporate governance, and it basically forced regulators to step in and make some major changes.
But look, this isn't just a history lesson. The reason we're still talking about Tyco is that its collapse raised these fundamental questions about corporate power, about executive pay, and about how we protect shareholders. And these are questions we are absolutely still grappling with today.
At the very heart of it all is this huge debate over executive pay. On the one hand, you have the argument that you need to offer huge, performance-based pay to attract the best talent and make sure their goals are the same as the shareholders. But then you've got Tyco, which is the perfect, glaring counterargument. That very same pay structure can push executives to take wild risks and gives them a powerful, powerful motive to commit fraud. And it goes way beyond just pay. The scandal really put a spotlight on these other massive governance challenges. Like, how do you build a board of directors that's actually independent and has the guts to challenge a powerful CEO? How do you give shareholders the power to hold management accountable? And, maybe the biggest one, how do you deal with the fact that executives know everything, and the board often only knows what they're told?
And that leads us to the final, and maybe the most important part of this whole story. The scandal itself is over, but the questions it raised are very much still alive. These are the kinds of debates happening in boardrooms all over the world right now. So first, there's this fundamental challenge. In a gigantic, sprawling company like Tyco was, where there's so much going on, How can a board of directors, who are essentially part-timers, ever really know what's happening? How can they possibly keep an effective eye on senior management?
Second, we come right back to that central dilemma about compensation. Are things like stock options and huge bonuses more likely to create shareholder value and keep executives in line? Or, in the real world, do they just end up encouraging people to bend or break the rules to get that massive payout?
And that leads to the final question. So what's the answer? What kind of reforms, whether it's to board structures or shareholder rights, would actually fix the weaknesses that Tyco made so painfully obvious? The truth is, there are no easy answers here. And that is precisely why this story remains such a critical and cautionary tale about corporate power.